Joy English School. I'm Chris Gorski.
I'm Anthony.
Today is April 10th. We're on pages 22 and 23 today. It's the book club. And our book title this month is Frindle.
Yeah, 又到了我们好书俱乐部的单元咯。那我们今天要介绍的好书呢，它的英文名叫做 Frindle， 它的中文 title 呢，我们叫它粉灵豆。等一下想到粉灵豆，然后想到 Frindle， 英文又没有这个字，所以基本上你在看到中文或英文 title 的时候，都不会晓得我们到底要说什么。
That's right. So what are we talking about? Well, we're talking about a story about how words are formed and get added to the dictionary.
Yeah, 我们来看到副标题，它这边写到说 A story about how words are formed. 到底呢这个单字如何形成的？还有呢 and get added to the dictionary. 好，这边呢我们要介绍的故事呢，其实事实上跟字典有点关系，但主要这个故事内容非常非常的有趣哦。那我们今天赶快来看看到底 Frindle 是什么吧。
Frindle. Nick is a fifth grade student who loves playing jokes on his classmates. One day, he tries to play a trick on his English teacher, Mrs. Granger. He asks her, "Who chose the meaning of the words in the dictionary?" Mrs. Granger tells Nick to write an essay about this subject. While researching, Nick discovers that ordinary people decide the meaning of words. Nick finds a pen while walking home and decides to call it a Frindle. Nick's friends think this is funny and start calling pens Frindles as well. Soon after, everyone in his class is using this new word. Mrs. Granger doesn't like this. She begins punishing students who say Frindle in class. But this doesn't work. The word becomes more and more popular and eventually spreads around the world. Several years later, Nick receives a package from Mrs. Granger. It's the latest edition of a popular dictionary that has added Frindle to it. In a note, she explains she fought against the word on purpose so people would notice it and it would become more popular. In response, Nick mails her the original pen as a gift and playfully tells her that she can call it anything she wants.
All right, friends, let's take a look at our first paragraph. And our first sentence begins, Nick is a fifth grade student who loves playing jokes on his classmates.
好，在这个故事里面呢，我们的主角呢叫 Nick。好，这边的话，第一段的第一句话，他就告诉你说 ，Nick is a fifth grade student。好，他是一个5年级的学生 ，who loves playing jokes on his classmates。他很喜欢跟同学开玩笑哦，感觉像是一个有点调皮的这个主角，对不对？好，他第一句话就告诉我们主角的本身的一点个性和他的名字。
So, pick up your pencils. You should always be writing in your magazine and making notes. Let's look at the phrase playing jokes on somebody. Number one, we play jokes. We don't do jokes. We could also say to pull a prank. So pull, just like la, right? Pull. And then a prank, P-R-A-N-K, just means a joke on your friend. You do something funny and it makes them laugh.
没错，提到这个 pull 我还顺便会让我想到stop pulling my leg， 好，就只说不要再跟我开玩笑啦。所以说在这里的话，我们提到开玩笑的时候，我们动词会用 play jokes。然后如果说今天是对某人开玩笑 ，play jokes on somebody， 也可以用到老师刚刚所讲的 prank。prank 就是有一点点恶作剧，但是其实不是太恶意的那种。
That's right. Now, also the name Nick is actually pretty popular in America, but I think in 20 years, I have taught one Nick. Isn't that funny? I just don't teach a lot of Nicks in Taiwan.
没错，在台湾的话，老师教了20年，只有教到一个叫 Nick 的。但是在美国的话，其实 Nick 这个字还是蛮常见的。
My best friend growing up was named Nick. All right, let's go to our next sentence. One day, he tries to play a trick, play a joke, pull a prank on his English teacher, Mrs. Granger.
好，现在告诉你说 ，One day 有一天呢 ，he tries to play a trick on his English teacher, Mrs. Granger。他有一天突然想要好好的捉弄，或是跟他闹一闹。他跟谁闹呢 ？His English teacher， 他的英文老师 Mrs. Granger。好，葛兰杰，这个 Granger 会让我想到那个哈利波特里面的那个 Hermione Granger， 那个妙丽，对不对？她的 last name 也是 Granger。她呢想要恶作剧，我后来去稍微看了一下这个摘要。她原本当初是想说，我问老师一个很难的问题，然后老师就得要努力解释这个问题，然后他就没有办法继续好好上课了，这样我就可以好好休息。这样子，他抱持这样的想法。
Now this is a real thing though, because this is called a teachable moment.When we are learning to become teachers, we are encouraged to grab a teachable moment and run with it because sometimes you have students that are very interested in it. But some teachers, when they talk about their teachable moments, they forget to do everything else. And the class goes from boring notes to just talking and 你可以放松后面睡觉一下, right? So I also know students that like to do this, and so I keep my teachable moments short with some classes and longer with others. Did you ever have a student do this to you?
Yeah, 有，就是那种有人会问一个问题，然后你很想要把这个东西好好讲清楚，可是又怕占用自己太多的课堂时间，但是这个东西又很重要，所以有的同学可能会问一些问题，故意浪费你的时间，他就可以放松，不写笔记啊，干嘛的？好，有的时候会碰到这种情况。
That's right. It's tough because you want to do it, but you can't do it too much.
Right.
All right, let's continue here. He asks her, who chose the meaning of the words in the dictionary?
好，接下来他的问题就开始了。Nick 就问了一个问题，说：“哎，那个老师，Who chose the meaning of the words in a dictionary？ 到底我们字典上面所看到这些字啊，是谁来决定这些字的意思呢？”他讲说，问老师这个问题的话，老师可能就要长篇大论的讲一堆，他就可以轻轻松松的听故事，不用上课了。
Now we need to know about Mrs. Granger. Mrs. Granger is a strict teacher, so.She doesn't like Nick being silly and goofy, and so we will understand her, finding her reaction in the next sentence here. She says, Mrs. Granger tells Nick to write an essay about the subject. So he wants to be like, teachable moment, 可以放松. And she's like, write an essay.
想不到道高一尺，魔高一丈，对，老师更厉害。他下一句就要告诉你说 ，Mrs. Granger tells Nick， 好，这个老师呢也不是省油的灯，就告诉尼克说 ，to write an essay about this subject。好啊，那你既然对这个题目这么有兴趣，来帮大家做点研究，好，下一堂课给你来报告吧。哇，还要写篇文章哦。待会发现到，结果搞了半天，本来想要偷鸡摸狗的，结果没有想到这件事情落到自己头上了。
Yeah, would you do this?Would you give the student an essay?
It depends. 看是如果是比较复杂的题目的话，我会叫他去自己先做点功课。
I would not, and I'll tell you why. Because Dowdy, when I'm making a choice for my classroom, I always think, what is the result I want? 我到底要我的全班有什么结果？ And 如果 Nick, and 可能 Nick 很烦的呢，很小讨厌 ，right？ 我给他作文，我知道我现在有29个另外一个学生，他们完全不敢问问题。因为我会被发现，对不对？ So I would not do this. Now, Mrs. Granger is a strict teacher. For me, 我非常鼓励. I really want my students to feel safe to talk to me. 真的是安全可以跟我说。为什么？台湾人非常怕说。And they want to have a very high score, 可以考100分. But 你说话的时候一定会说错。So I want my students to always feel safe. So I would never do this. I would just tell Nick to shut up.
OK，
Hey Nick, shut up.
老师真的是非常有爱心，他就想要说，其实事实上他会希望所有的学生都能够很放心的问问题，不要说被问问题就要给作业，然后要被罚写啊什么的。希望他有这样的安全感。然后最后老师开个玩笑说怎么会叫那个给我闭嘴
I would really tell Nick to shut up, but 他会很明显我是开玩笑，但是他开玩笑，学生会笑，他会知道。
没错。
Okay, let's continue. While researching, Nick discovers that ordinary people decide the meaning of words.
好，我们来看下面这句话，说 While researching， 就是在做这个研究的时候呢 ，Nick 发现了一个重大的事情。他说 Nick discovers that ordinary people decide the meaning of words. 原来呀， 所有字典上的这些字义呢，事实上是 the ordinary people， 就是普罗大众或是一般人来决定的。好，所以事实上不是有一个专家在后面就说这个字就是这样讲，原来是大家决定的。那好，
But 也有这样子 But we don't have time for that story. But I mean, it really is people that just, this is what the word means. We will come back after this break, and we got more of our story for today. Hey friends, welcome back to Enjoy English School. We're on pages 22 and 23. It's the book club, and we're talking about Frindle. Nick says, hey, what is this? Where do words come from? And his teacher's like, write an essay. And so he does. And he learns that just you and me, we're the people that make up the definitions of words. So this is what we usually call an inside joke. Small groups of people think some things are interesting or funny. People outside the group don't understand this word or they don't understand this joke. So, Anthony, I want to ask you, when you were young or today even, do you have some words that only you and your friends understand?
Yeah, but I can't remember them though. But I know that there are some words that we only us that like insider jokes. 好，就是那种圈内人的笑话，意思就是变成是说，只有我们这群人，可能有些人看到的发生了一些事情，然后比方说像我记得印象很深刻的事情，比方说 milk。牛奶这个词，有的时候会让我们自己的这个群组会发笑，是因为有人喝了牛奶，听了一个很好笑的笑话，然后那个因为他笑了嘛，然后牛奶就从鼻子这样喷出来，所以到后来大家听到牛奶的时候就会想到那个事情，但其他人听到牛奶的时候，他们不会任何反应，因为这是我们圈内人的笑话。
Yeah, that's funny. In elementary school,
yeah,
I mean, you guys know the word cool. It's just saying cool, right? When I was in elementary school, we said things that were cool. We called them butter, like that new song is real butter. That new song is real cool. And I thought everybody knew that butter meant cool. And so when I grew up, I would talk about butter and people thought I was like crazy. Who's this crazy person calling it butter? Like, what does that mean?
没错没错
Yeah, so, but listen, you all understand this. Remember a few years ago when everybody was dabbing? Everyone's like,
right.
Everyone was dabbing, right? And that's because someone decided it was cool and we all were dabbing and then your mom and dad were dabbing and grandma was dabbing and it became very uncool.
没错，的确是这样。老师刚刚提到一个字 dabbing， 好，是之前好几年前，他们有一个动作就是这样子。
You guys know dabbing.
这样子有没有？好，你可能有看过人家这样子，然后头要转向另外一侧这种感觉，那个叫 dabbing。所以这个字啊，很多都是我们因为某些情况下被创造出来的流行语嘛。但如果说揭发到说，你的爸爸、你的爷爷奶奶都在做 dabbing 的时候，本来很酷的事情就变得很不酷。
That's right. You see your grandma dabbing. And
no.
Dabbing is not butter anymore.
No.
All right, let's continue to paragraph 2. Nick finds a pen while walking home and decides to call it a Frindle.
好，第二段呢就很有趣咯。所以想想看，他从课堂上面，他自己的研究上面看到说，原来是大家决定的。于是呢，he wants to put it to the test in real life。好，在日常生活中去试试看。他说 Nick finds a pen， 他发现到，这是笔。While walking home and decide to call it a Frindle。好，从此以后呢，我决定不要叫笔，不叫这个笔这个名词 pen， 我要改名叫它 Frindle， 然后想办法让大家都加入我的行列，这样是不是就可以改名了？
Nick's friends think this is funny, and start calling pens Frindles as well.
好，所以在这边的话呢 ，Nick's friends， 好，他的朋友们也觉得说，这个想法很好，我们笔呢，我们不叫 pen， 我们叫做 Frindle， 好不好？大家一起来叫吧 ，and start calling pens Frindles as well， 大家就开始跟着 Nick 把笔叫做 Frindles 了。
Nick has good friends, and they support him. 有支持他。Soon after, everyone in his class is using this new word.
太可爱了，他就很快的，好 ，everyone in his class， 全班呢说，那个 Frindle 借一下，就是借笔嘛，对吧？大家就开始真的使用 Frindle 来当做笔这个字了。
Mrs. Granger doesn't like this.
Mrs. Granger， 这个 Granger 他们的英文老师就觉得说，你们这样子太荒唐、太叛逆了，对不对？不喜欢这样的想法。
Now remember, Mrs. Granger is a strict teacher, so now she has her 5th grade students using words incorrectly. She's an English teacher, so she needs to, like, 要求, like, she needs to be strict and make sure her students are being accurate because that's her job. And now she has a whole class of students making up words. That can be big trouble.
没错，所以你可以想象一下，一个英文老师在看到大家用英文的时候非常不正确，明明就是比你们叫什么 Frindle， 你们这群小屁孩，对不对哈？所以到后来他就决定要惩罚，好，开始去惩罚这些使用 Frindle 这个字的这个学生。
Right. Mrs. Granger doesn't like this. Our next sentence begins. She begins punishing students who say Frindle in class.But this doesn't work.
通常呢，你越去打压一个行为，哈，在那个年纪的小朋友就觉得，这个很棒，这个很棒，我更是要讲。所以他这边他就讲说 ，She begins punishing students who say Frindle in class. 那这个 Mrs. Granger 就开始在课堂上说，谁敢给我在课堂上讲 Frindle 这个字，我就好好的惩罚他。但是这招有没有？这招不管用。But this doesn't work.
The word becomes more and more popular and eventually spreads around the world.
好，结果后来呢，不打压还好，打压结果就是 the word becomes more and more popular. 好，这个字就越来越流行了。And eventually， 好，这个字的话就是到了最后怎么样呢？Spreads around the world， 全世界都知道 Frindle 这个字了。
Did you ever hear the word bootylicious?No.
Really?
Okay, so when I was in college, there was this really famous song called Bootylicious. Booty is like a butt.
Oh.
And it meant like a very beautiful person. And I remember everyone saying bootylicious. Booty, remember, is a PPD. So it was like, wow, this beautiful person. They're bootylicious. And it's just... Why such a bad word as to become so popular?
Bootylicious. Okay.
Bootylicious.
I learned something new today.
Right. So this is called the Barbara Streisand effect. This really happened maybe 30 years ago. There was a famous singer, and she did not want people to know where she lived. But there was a scientist that was studying the beach near her house. And she got very mad, and she sued the scientist and to keep the scientist quiet. And you can't talk about my beach because my house is there, blah, blah, blah. And in the end, because Barbara Streisand tried so hard to stop the people talking about her beach became super famous. And people love to go to her beach now.
Oh, wow. 各位你可能有听过一个很早以前的一个歌手叫做芭芭拉史翠珊 Barbara Streisand。好，她的话呢，她本身对自己隐私非常的保密到家，所以说到后来当她的家附近刚好有一个海滩嘛，有一个科学家在研究海滩的时候，意外发觉到说，这是他家这样子，那他就极力的去打压说，你不准讲这是我家哦，他就很努力的去压消息啊，然后说你不准做你的研究啊，去报道这个海滩的事情，不然大家跑来怎么办？他越是努力的打压，到最后结果发现到大家都怎么样，都知道他家住那边。
Everyone wanted to see this beach where she lived. Why does she want to keep it such a secret?
没错，你越压，大家就越好奇，越想知道，最后搞得全部都知道了。
Yeah, the harder you try to stop a secret, the faster it travels.
没错。
All right, let's stop here. Let's take a break. And when we come back, we have our final paragraph. Hey everyone, welcome back to Enjoy English School. We're on pages 22 and 23. We're finishing our final paragraph of the Frindle story. Let's begin. Several years later, Nick receives a package from Mrs. Granger.
好，接下来我们来看最后一段这个地方，他说 Several years later， 几年过后呢 ，Nick receives a package 就是他的收到一个包裹，谁寄来的？From Mrs. Granger， 原来是他的英语老师Mrs. Granger 寄给他的一个包裹。
It's the latest edition, the newest version of a popular dictionary that has added Frindle to it.
好，现在就这个包裹里面装的是什么呢？ It is the latest edition of a popular dictionary. 好，这个 edition 就是 version 的意思，就是最新版的popular dictionary，很受欢迎的一本字典 that has added Frindle to it。好，里面呢有记载了 Frindle， 也就是他们当初所创造出来叫笔的这个粉灵豆这个字 ，Frindle 就被加进去了。
Now there's a real dictionary that does this. It's really famous. It's called the OED. You don't really need to know that, but they always add some words that, like they want people to know their dictionary exists. And so they add words like bootylicious, like I told you a little earlier. They'll add words that are very cool and popular, and it makes people so mad that these ridiculous, crazy words get added to the dictionary because they become real words then.
啊，没错，所以它有些这种新字啊，牛津啦或什么，它收了一些新字，对不对？比方说，如果说提到这个新字的话，我最近有看到一个字叫做 goblin mode。goblin mode 就是那种躺平的，好，就变成是说哦，在疫情期间你躺平了，然后你就觉得说好像什么事都不想做啊那样的感觉。那 goblin mode 的话，这个字的话就有一种躺平文化的概念，这个也是最近去年的时候才被加进来的。
That is a really funny word. I like that, goblin mode. Yeah, it's goblin mode is a lot better than bootylicious. But bootylicious. All right, let's continue. In a note, she explains she fought against the word on purpose so people would notice it and it would become more popular. Yeah, okay, right, Mrs.
Okay,
sure,
whatever you say.
Okay. Yeah, okay.
所以下面这句话告诉你说 ，in a note， 它上面有个纸条哦，它就告诉他说 ，she explains， 他就解释说了 ，she fought against the word on purpose。他为什么那时候会想尽办法去打压呢？因为他根本就知道说 ，so people would notice it， 大家就会注意到你 Frindle 这个字。And it would become more popular. 然后呢，你的字就会变得非常非常的受欢迎，就流行起来，你也达到你的目的了。怎么样？我很棒吧？这样感觉。
Yeah,
okay. 好，你说了算。
In response, to answer her, Nick mails her the original Frindle or pen as a gift and playfully tells her that she can call it anything she wants.
没错，最后一句话就告诉你说 ，in response， 那这个 Nick 他怎么回复这封信呢？他就说了 ，Nick mails her the original pen as a gift， 他就当初把它命名为 Frindle 的那支笔，好寄给了他的这个老师 Mrs. Granger， 好 as a gift 作为礼物 ，and playfully tells her that， 好就很戏谑的开玩笑的跟他说 ，she can call it anything she wants， 好这支笔，然后当初叫 Frindle 这支笔来寄给你。好，你想叫它什么就叫什么哦，这种感觉。
It could be rude, right?
Yeah.
So I want to ask you for our discussion question, like we talked about earlier. I said butter. What was the word you used?
Milk.
Milk. Do you have any words you have in your group? Maybe they're not as popular as Frindle, but what are those words? Tell us what they mean. They can be in Chinese if it's not rude, and just type it out. We really like to read those.
没错，好，记得，如果你有类似这种字汇，就是你跟你的朋友群里面才会使用的，然后只有你们讲的时候，大家还是觉得哦，我们用这个字很酷。那是什么字呢？你告诉我们一下，或者是告诉一下这个字背后的故事哦。好，你要留言的话，我们两个都会看。
Yes. All right. With that, let's get ready for vocab review. Okay, friends, it's time for vocab review, and our first phrase is to play a joke on somebody.
To play a joke on somebody 的意思呢，就是对某人恶作剧、开玩笑。
Number 2, we have an adjective, ordinary.
Ordinary 意思就是普通的、一般的。
Just regular. Number 3, soon after.
Soon after 不久之后。
That's a great transition. Number 4, to punish.
To punish 就是惩罚你。
Number 5, eventually. One more time. Eventually.
Eventually 就是最后，好，就是 in the end 的那样的感觉。
Number 6, addition.
Edition 好，在这边的话指的是那个书籍的最可能新的版本。版本的话，你可以用 edition， 或者可以使用 version version 这个词来表达。
Number 7, to fight against.
Fight against something 和跟什么东西对抗。
And number 8, on purpose.
On purpose 就是故意的。
Now, the opposite of on purpose is by accident.
By accident 就是不小心的、意外的那种感觉。
Okay, so on purpose, by accident. With that, we're done for today. Don't forget to tell us your words down in there. I actually read them. I know you read them. We really like to see them. So tell us what you think. And for Enjoy English School, I'm Chris Gorski.
I'm Anthony.
We'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Bye.